This is Office Hours with SIU System President Dan Mahony, a monthly podcast that explores what's happening in and around American higher education. And now your host, SIU System President Dan Mahony.
Thanks for tuning in to Office Hours. I'm your host, SIU System President Dan Mahony. In this podcast, we're going to be exploring what's going on in the world of higher education today, including some of the major issues and challenges. Now, if you've been following in recent months, campus programs for diversity, equity, inclusion, also known as DEI, have been under attack. There's been calls for us to stop offering these programs, and some universities have. The SIU system is proud of the progress we've made on anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and its impact on student success. We remain committed to working hard in the SIU system to make a positive impact on our campuses and in our communities, and frankly, there's still plenty of work to do. One thing we'll focus on in today's episode is how our DEI and student success work is truly making a positive difference in real people's lives. And you're going to meet one of those students today who's had a really impressive turnaround. Lidell Miller is our first guest on the podcast. He is a student at SIU Carbondale who came close to not being a student here anymore due to poor performance. But thankfully, some of our retention efforts provided him the support he needed to be successful. So let's go to Lidell now. Lidell, let's start with your background. What year are you at SIU Carbondale, and where are you from originally?
I'm a junior at SIUC, and I'm from Chicago, South Side.
And you grew up in Chicago, played high school basketball. How did the experience shape your journey, and how did the pandemic impact your path to college?
Oh, it impacted so much more I can just go on and on and on. But truly, like I said, I grew up on the South Side of Chicago. I went to Morgan Park High School for 4 years, from 2018 to 2022. And I was a darn good Morgan Park athlete, I would say. So my freshman year, I was playing varsity. My sophomore year, I made all-city, all-state varsity. And then junior year, COVID happens. And then during COVID, I gained a lot of weight. And my senior year, I was all-city, all-state. So I say that to say that because my scholarship started to push away as I gained weight during COVID, and that's how COVID has impacted me. So it was this great program called Hope Chicago. Well, I call it a family in an organization, but some may call it a program. So they came about February 22nd, and they was like, okay, we're going to send you guys to school for free. And what I mean by school, I mean college. And so we all went, all our friends was happy, we was happy, and I was like, well, I'm going to go to college too. So I chose SIUC, and at that time, as a freshman, I didn't understand the importance of higher education, right? And so this great lady came along who was our campus contact, named Brittany Swims. And I was supposed to meet with her throughout my freshman year, and I didn't my first semester. So I started getting calls from Hope Chicago, my mom, and things like, hey, you're doing everything you're not supposed to be doing. We need you to get it together. And I wasn't proactive in my education. I was partying 7 days a week, and I just truly was not committed to my education. And so Brittany Swims, she called up me, and she was like, this is mandatory. So I went, and she was like, you don't understand how impactful this scholarship is that Hope Chicago has given you. I'm going to need you to get in or get out. And what I did was got in. I went home, and I told everybody this. I went home, and I said, this is not going to work if I don't stay committed. Everybody could believe in me, and everybody could say, I can see something in you, but that's not going to work, and nothing's going to change unless I stay committed. And so when Brittany Swims explained, hey, you need to stay here, and you don't understand, I'm seeing it now as I rise, you know what I'm saying? So you see it, you don't really see it in a moment, but at the end, and you go in the future, you see it, and I'm actually seeing it. I'm getting so many interviews. I'm speaking on so many panels, speaking in front of major audience, and just to see how that has impacted me it's truly. I'm truly blessed, I would say, to have Mrs. Swims in my life.
So, you talk about Brittany Swims, who's, again, our coordinator for the Hope Scholars program in SIU, and the impact she had on you. Tell us a little bit more about kind of what she did. Was it her belief in you, pushing you, kind of that combination of things? What really made a difference for you?
You know what it was? You have some students that may say, oh, this and that. No, it was literally everything. I can go to her about at home issues, financial issues, why I can't stay. And she just always just been there. And to the point where if she didn't understand, she'll point me to somebody who would. So she has the right resources. And if she didn't know somebody that do this, she'll say, okay, Lidell, you can go here and they're going to provide you with the right resources that you need. And what really did it for me is literally every day I was in her office, Miss Swim's office, and literally she's helping me with my work. Like, I'm a good communicator. I'm a good spokesperson, but I hate English. And so literally I would go in there with literally 8 long pages of paper, and she would help me. And she was just, if you have any questions, like, hey, how good, like literally I would sit in her office all day until she get off work. That's how impactful she was. And it was more so not even about, take the education away. It was more so about us discussing life. And I think that's what resonated to me, was me understanding and her trying to give me the understanding, the importance of what life is about and what this means. And she did just that. And I just take my head off to her every single time. Like, we laugh about it now, but seriously, she's amazing.
Yeah, she is. And I think what I hear you saying is it's not just the academic support, but it's the caring about you as a person made a real difference, and feeling you had somebody to go to would connect you with any of the resources. And we all I always say we all need support when we're in college. It's just different what we need. And so finding someone who can help connect you is pretty critically important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, again, you've turned around pretty well. It's a pretty impressive academic turnaround, and you there's a reason why you're on all those panels. So talk a little bit about that academic turnaround and how you're doing now.
You know what? I call it it's me having self-discipline and establishing self-discipline. And I say that because if you don't have discipline in anything, you're not going to be successful in it, because you have to know this is what I need to do and at this time. And really for me, it was establishing time management, establishing self-discipline, and truly really having that drive to say, like, yo, you can do this. And ever since then, seriously, like connecting with my professors, just going to class, like, what is 50 minutes out of a day to go sit in a class? And once I realized that college, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's like, you can do this. You can do it more than you can't, right? And that's how I look at it, because it's just a matter of being active and being just disciplined and having a drive. You got to have a drive in anything you do, because if you don't, it wouldn't work. Seriously.
So you talked a lot about time management, going to class, making sure you're making the commitments. Tell us a little bit about how your GPA has changed, really, from the early part of college to what you're doing now.
I think it has changed because, seriously, and I know this may sound repetitive, but literally just applying yourself in a way that you know that you're going to be successful. Like, for some instance, like we had a meeting, and they was like, hey, if you take these classes over, this will help your GPA. And also, if you take some in the summer, it translates back. And when I tell you, I have literally been taking 18 credits since my spring semester of my freshman year, just trying to get back. And I have made the dean's list, and last semester I had a 4.0 GPA, so that was so great. I mean, it just you gotta really say you want this, and if you don't, it's okay, because that means that you don't have to waste your time anymore. You can find something that you feel like you need to do and that is necessary. For me, I feel like getting a degree and me establishing these relationships with, I call them great people, I feel like that was my journey. That's what it was, because I couldn't go play sports. I mean, because I didn't have any scholarships for sports. So me establishing these relationships and building my network, which I'm going to continue to be, and also be a student in life. People say, oh, I think I know this. No. When you be a student in life forever, you cannot stop learning anything. And I'm willing to learn anything from anybody.
Now, you're not just a student. As you mentioned earlier, you're willing to share your story. You know, you're a Hope Ambassador. And tell us a little bit about what that role involves and how you use your experience to support and guide other students.
Oh, absolutely. And what it is I love to do it. Because if I'm being honest, it pays, but it don't pay as much, right? So you just have to love to do it. And I feel like I love to do that, because if I could prevent these students from doing what I did, then that would be great. That would rise the numbers for Hope Chicago. I'm trying to let these scholars know that it's more to life than what you guys think, which is partying and doing all the unnecessary things. Like, if you just lock in, you're going to get a chance to party, because partying that's going to come when you start making big bucks. But my goal is to just let it resonate to them and let it see like, hey, I'm not judging you guys because I'm not judgmental, but this is my story and this is what I went through. And I just want you guys to prevent that. And so far, so good. Like literally I have students text me like, I know we the same age. I just think you should be my mentor because you just great. Like your advice worked. And that's my goal. My goal is to make it reach and just be real with them. I think it's as a peer, when you be real with your other peers, it just resonates more than hearing it from an adult. And I know they may sound crazy, but it is. Some people not like me, right? They don't listen to the adults and be like, oh, okay, so what she said was right. No, I want this to resonate to the students and the scholars and let them know like, it's not how you start, it's how you're going to finish.
No, that's a great example of one of the things that we find to be very effective, which is the peer mentor. You know, sometimes students working with students makes a big difference to actually both students. It's valuable to the student mentor,
Absolutely.
the peer mentor, and valuable to the people they're mentoring. So I'm glad you're involved with that. I think that can make a big difference. And kind of
absolutely.
When you talk with those students, what do you share? What is the big advice that you give to them to help improve their success?
This is when they walk in. This is what I say. I say, what is an hour or 50 minutes? And I only say that just to say go to class, but you spend time, and I don't know if they realize that, but you spend time doing so like playing a game, you spend time doing so much of the unnecessary things. What is just going to get involved? What is that going to take? You here for what? You're not here to party, because if you was, you wouldn't be getting the calls. I wouldn't be mean with you. You here to be proactive about your education and understand their point. So I always try to get them to, what are you here for? What is your why? So that's my question I ask them. What is your why? And then it go from there. Like the conversation just go from here to there. And then I start sharing my experiences about what happens in my past. And that just gets the conversation going. That just get them to look like, oh, okay, like I'm kind of getting it. And I always say, if you don't get it, you can always contact me about anything, not just about education, life. Like that's what's I'm big on, is what is impactful to my life. Because once you get that down pat, I feel like education is going to be a walk in the park.
No, and that's a great point about this, looking for the why. And answering that question of why, I think, is important in almost everything we do in life, but certainly in college when you're working hard, to know why you're doing it. I think that's a great piece of advice for our students. Looking ahead, what do you want to do after you graduate from SIU Carbondale?
You know what? I got asked this so many times. I want to become an NBA owner of a team, but I also know that it's steps that I have to take to do that. And I'm willing to take those steps. I'm willing to be committed. I'm willing to sacrifice my time, my efforts, and everything to do that. And I'm going to do that. Some people may say, oh, that's far-fetched, but no. For you, it is, not for me, because I understand the steps, the discipline I'm going to take, the sacrifice you're going to take, and that's exactly what I wanted to do. But for the meantime, in between time, I want to just work for the NBA, and that's my goal. I know people say, well, what exactly? I would say basketball operations, because I have a passion for basketball, and my mom always told me, do something that you would do for $0, and that is sports.
Yeah, no, and well, if you get to be an NBA owner, I'm a New York Knicks fan, and we've been waiting over 50 years for a championship. So if you'll buy the Knicks and give me that championship, I will be forever indebted to you. So
I'm a Golden State Warriors fan, so
nothing against the Warriors, but we need more help. So
absolutely,
Lidell, I want to thank you so much for joining us today, sharing about your story. I wish you the best at the rest of your time at SIU Carbondale. Hope to see you on campus. What a great story from Lidell. When you think about a student like Lidell who got off to a rough start academically, I think a lot of people assume that means they're not capable and write them off. But fortunately, people like Brittany Swims and other people at SIU Carbondale continue to support him. And now he's a 4.0 student, which really shows he was capable all along. And so I think that's a great example of what we're trying to do with all of our students, is get them to their maximum level of performance. So now we're going to move on and talk a little bit about the student success work we do. And we really don't do it alone. We do it with other people and other organizations. And we really have some great partners who provide us with grants, resources, that helps us create higher education opportunities for all. Two of those important partner organizations are the Lumina Foundation and Sova Solutions. And that's where we're going to go next to the guest from there. Dr. Jasmine Haywood is the strategy director at Lumina, and Dr. Allison Kadlec is a senior partner at Sova. And I want to thank both of you for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Dr. Haywood, tell me a little bit about what does research tell us about what makes the biggest difference in improving student success?
Based on what I've seen, both in philanthropy and as a recovering higher ed researcher, I think there's three things that the research consistently tells us are big factors in improving student success. Engagement, support, and a sense of belonging. So when students feel connected to their learning environments, whether that be through good advising practices or relationships with faculty members or peer networks and mentoring, those things show that it leads to students persisting at higher rates. All students persisting at higher rates, academic support structures like proactive advising or early alert systems as well can serve to help us, identify and address challenges before they get worse. And then I would, as part thinking about a sense of belonging, particularly for marginalized students. Institutions that create inclusive and affirming environments will see stronger student outcomes because students feel valued and they feel capable of achieving those goals both inside and outside of the classroom.
Well, thank you. Dr. Kadlec, is there anything you'd like to add?
I love everything that Dr. Haywood just said. And the only thing that I would add is, and actually it's you, President Mahony, who I hear talking about this more than most. And that is, at the end of the day, one of the most important things, maybe the deal breaker or maker for students, is faculty and staff who believe in their ability to be successful. And so cultivating for students environments and preparing the people that engage with students to approach them as, from an asset-minded perspective, but also with a commitment to their ability to be successful and belief in them has so much to do with student success. And again, there's a lot. This doesn't mean that every student will be successful. It does mean that most students are capable of being successful if they have the right environments, the right supports, and so, yeah, I think a strong belief in students' ability to be successful, which entails growth-mindedness for faculty and staff and advisors, is really, really important, because we talk a lot about growth-mindedness and grit and persistence for students, but we don't talk nearly enough about that for the professionals that shape these students' educational experiences.
Yeah, no, that's critically important. We know certainly from the research that the growth-minded faculty has a greater impact on student success than either their own belief that they can improve, and so that believing in the fact that someone else believes in them can be a big difference in their success. But we don't always see that from instructors. And I will not say, I don't think that was the mistake I made as an instructor. I think my biggest mistake was I thought if I gave students more work, that meant I was a rigorous instructor, and so I gave them way too much work my first couple semesters, which created stress for them and, frankly, too much work for me. But what do you see as kind of some common mistakes that instructors or maybe even institutions make unintentionally, but that may have a detrimental impact on student success and not really help them going forward? We'll start with Dr. Kadlec.
I don't know if this counts as a mistake or if it's more sort of the perils of traditional mindset around students. I think a lot of us, most of us, were prepared in disciplines that treated our job. And I have had faculty members say things like this to me, like I was prepared to be a goalie, to, behind me is the ivory tower and I'm here to protect it and to sort out sort wheat from chaff, and to not, that there is a kind of sorting mentality and mindset that circulates in the historical sort of traditional approaches to academics. And it really is. It was actually a faculty member in California who said to me, I was trained to unearth gems, but isn't it our job to create the conditions for people to shine, right? And so the shifting of the mindset from one of sorting as though, that's the job to be done, to one that is about supporting student learning is really important. And I think it goes kind of alongside the shift from, historically it was about the person on the stage, the sage on the stage instead of the guide on the side. So how do we create an environment where the work to be done isn't about delivering teaching or delivering, it's about fostering learning, right? And so for me, those things sort of go hand in hand. So it's not so much about necessarily the mistakes that we make, but I think we've inherited a lot of mindsets that are that run counter to what our students need from us, what our institutions need from us, what our communities and employers need from us, and there's a lot of unpacking work to be done there.
No, that's a really good point. I think certainly we've all seen faculty members over the years who think the number of students who fail their class is a sign that they're doing good work or they're doing what they're supposed to do. And I've always kind of felt the more students who get A's in my class, as long as I'm setting high standards, that's actually what the ideal is, and that's what I'm shooting for. Dr. Haywood, is there anything you want to add to that question?
Yeah, actually, what you just said resonated with me because for undergrad, I attended an engineering institution, a very competitive one. And it was just like the movies where the first day of classes, the professors would say, look to your left, look to your right. By the end of the school year, one of you won't be here. And it was the opposite mindset of what you just described, Dr. Mahony. So I definitely resonate with making sure that we're supporting students and that they're successful. Some of the, I think, common, I'll say, patterns that I see that both instructors and institutions make are assuming that all students come in with the same level of preparation and support. And that was an assumption I made as a first year faculty member. I assumed that, of course, all of my students were taught how to write. And of course, all of my students were taught, proper grammar and things like that. But I found that it varied, and I needed to adjust to adequately support my students. And, faculty are not always given the time and the space to do that. And so I think that's one thing. It can lead to rigid teaching methods that really don't accommodate the diverse learning needs that today's students have. Another one that I see is too much of a focus on content delivery instead of engaging with students, which, I've seen lead to really passive learning instead of active participation from the students. Gone are the days where faculty should be, lecturing at students for 2 hours straight, right? We want them to be engaged in what they're learning and not just sit there as empty receptacles. And then lastly, something that I see is, again, both from instructors and from institutions, is them inadvertently reinforcing a deficit mindset, whereby they are really honing in on students' weaknesses rather than building on their strengths. So recognizing and adjusting for these factors, I think, really can make a significant difference in student outcomes and some of the gaps that we see in the data when it comes to student outcomes.
Yeah, I agree with you, and thank you for that. I'm going to move on to kind of what do you see as some of the most effective strategies that you've seen instructors use that can improve student performance in their classes? And we'll start with you, Dr. Haywood.
Sure. Yeah. So picking up where I left off with my last answer around passive learning instead of active participation. One effective strategy is really just creating interactive and student-centered learning environments. One of my former mentors, Dr. Nancy Chisholm, has done a lot of great work on this. But the research and the data show that faculty who integrate real-world applications, active learning techniques, and projects that involve collaboration really see higher engagement and retention from their students. I'd say another effective practice I've seen is providing timely and constructive feedback that really allows students to adjust and improve their performance rather than waiting till they receive a final grade, right? So whatever methods and modes of assessment that allow some quick feedback go a long way for students. And then the last one, that I'm thinking of is really simple, but it's building relationships with students. So when faculty really take the time to get to know their students, to allow their students to trust them, whether that's through, check-ins or office hours or just a simple acknowledgement of what they're going through, their challenges. For example, if they are a student parent or a working adult, I know from my experience they go a long way when it comes to relationships and ultimately lead to helping to foster motivation and persistence for our students.
Thank you. Dr. Kadlec, do you have anything you want to add?
I think that was just a brilliant answer, Dr. Haywood. I truly don't have, you hit everything on my list and then some. I think it just really, really well said all around. So no, I do not have anything to add. That's great.
So Dr. Haywood, I'll finish up with this one. We know even from our own data here at SIU that financial issues may play a role in student success as much as what happens in the classroom. What strategies have you seen university to address some of those financial issues as well?
So several years ago, one of my former colleagues, Dr. Zakiya Smith-Ellis, led some work that we called the cost beyond tuition. And essentially the premise is institutions being clear and transparent about the total cost of attendance. So I think that's one thing that's important to address financial barriers for students. So ensuring that institutions are transparent about not just the cost of tuition, but the cost of things like housing and food and transportation, textbooks, so that students and their families have all of the right data and information to make an informed decision. Other institutions are doing things like restructuring financial aid so that it's more, more transparent and predictable, really reducing uncertainty for students and their families. Things like expanding work-based learning opportunities so that students can, not just gain experience through internships or on-campus employment, but so that they can earn money and gain experience at the same time. And then lastly, I'll mention strategies like emergency grants and completion scholarships that really serve as a safety net to ensure that students stay enrolled when they face unexpected, life challenges and expenses along the way to completing their degree.
Thank you, Dr. Kadlec. Anything you want to add?
It's a great answer, Dr. Haywood. I love it. And I think you've hit on the main things. I guess the only thing that I would add is, we've seen a number of institutions, and I'll say there's some really important learning from the community college sector for universities in this about what it means to build resilient system around students' basic needs and around the full cost of attendance, right, for students, as Jasmine was talking about. And a lot of that work is, relatively new, but not brand new, right? And I think in the early days, some of the emergency aid or food pantries or things like that were constructed as isolated, disconnected solutions within a complex educational environment and institution. And the institutions that are having the greatest success with removing poverty as a barrier for students, or removing barriers that are financial for students, barriers to students achieving their goals, are the ones that are taking a more comprehensive look. And that means connecting the dots between not only the services and the supports that are available, but the human beings then that interact with students, so that every faculty member knows how to direct a student to the kinds of supports and resources are available, so that the different offices and functions within a university or college that might, touch on or connect with students are well informed and well connected with each other about the ways in which there are resources available for students and supports. And so I guess the only thing, that I'm adding here to Jasmine's comments about the what of it has to do with the how of it, and the commitment that institutions are making to cross-silo communication and collaboration to ensure that very strong system of support.
Yeah, no, it's a good point in trying to connect students with all the resources that are available. I will say at one of my previous institutions, we found when we gave scholarships to students as freshmen, if they fell below a 3.0, we took it away, which was killing our retention rate, so we stopped doing that. And it wasn't finding new resources, it was making sure they could count on those resources going forward if they were still academically making progress. So a little thing like that made a massive difference for those students and frankly changed our retention rate pretty considerably. So
that's a great point. That is a great illustration. That's a great story.
Well, I always think about, there's a few people who talk about, sometimes it's things we do ourselves as institutions that reduce student success, and we don't really think about the implications of what we're doing and how that will impact our students' ability to stay at our institutions. So I want to say a big thank you to Drs. Haywood and Kadlec and SIU Carbondale student Lidell Miller for joining us for this episode. Make sure you're subscribed to our podcast on Apple and Spotify so you don't miss an episode. You can also find us on our website, siusystem.edu/podcast. As we wrap up this episode, I want to acknowledge our production team on office hours, SIU Edwardsville graduate student Solomon Amandi, and SIU system leader for marketing communications, Katie Sheehan. I also want to thank Jason Church at WSIE Radio here on the SIUE campus for his guidance and for letting us use his studio for recording. And last but not least, I want to thank you, all of our listeners, for carving out some time to listen and maybe even learn a bit today. So thank you.
Be sure to join us next time on Office Hours for further conversation with the people who work in and study higher education. Special thanks to Kara Baldus-Merriman and Daniel Merriman for the use of their composition Writer's Block as the Office Hours theme song. And thank you for listening to Office Hours with SIU System President Dan Mahony.